So, you want to change the world. Build something that makes people go, maybe you're going to reinvent the way we move, or transform how we work, or change the way we think. Problem is, you'll be flying blind. You build product on one end, results come out the other, but in between is a massive black hole. That's why we built Amplitude. It gives you a whole new understanding of customer behavior, predicts outcomes, and adapts experiences to drive world-changing results.
Every click, every interaction is input from your customers telling you what they need and why they need it. And that is 1,000 times stronger than any strategy or any sort of corporate planning session that you could provide.
It starts with our behavioral graph. By sorting through millions of seemingly random actions, it instantly finds patterns, makes recommendations, and connects them to outcomes that really matter, like engagement, growth, and loyalty. Now you have the power to explore, collaborate, personalize, and experiment.
Wow.
Amplitude provides a system where we can share insights and tag each other and collaboratively craft a narrative together. And we can do this all within one system, which is really what makes Amplitude special.
So, you want to change the world? Now you can.
Thanks for tuning into the Product Operations Summit. We really hope you're enjoying the event so far, as there's even more to come. All sessions are designed to be interactive and to give you the chance to engage with our panelists and speakers, so come ready to get involved with your questions and comments. For access to even more exclusive Product Ops content, check out PLA membership plans at productledalliance.com. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the next session. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our final panel of today. We are going to be looking at Product Ops role in powering product launches. We've got a fantastic group of panelists for you. I was going to say this afternoon, but I don't know where you're tuning in from. So this morning, this afternoon, this evening, tonight. It's going to be led by the wonderful Shintaro Matsui from Amplitude, and he's joined by a fantastic lineup of panelists. I will let him and them introduce themselves. So without further ado, Shintaro and our wonderful panel, please take it away.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Heather. Hi, folks. Super excited for this upcoming panel, especially for the panelists. I've been fortunate to get to know them over the last couple of weeks and really excited to hear a lot of the insights that they have to share. I think before diving in, I'll just give a chance for them to quickly introduce themselves and provide a quick fun fact about them. I'll pass it over to Sherry.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm Sherry. I'm a program manager of product ops at GitHub, and I was previously at Better as a product operations manager there. And in my product operations experience, I've been focused on developing and iterating on new processes and setting product teams up for success from ideation through post-launch. In my current role, I am very focused at the intersection of product releases, customer feedback, and road mapping. And as for a fun fact about me is that in college, I actually majored in music and my primary instrument is bassoon.
That's
Great.
awesome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. I work at Tenable, which is a cyber exposure management company. We offer a range of products to our customers to provide insights and visibility into their vulnerabilities and help them manage those risks. And what I do here is that I lead the product operation function here, anything related to product operation, but specifically focusing on helping empowering the product organization as well as the cross-functional teams like product marketing and CSM, customer support, and customer service teams with product analytics and operationalizing these insights into actions and eventually facilitate product adoption. I also help the business teams to get connected with the product organization better, identify some opportunities, mitigate risks, and generally like help finalize the product strategy. Fun fact about me, I think I can have any dish with a plain yogurt, maybe except sweets. So if you do not like yogurt, do not take any restaurant recommendations from me.
That's awesome, Daria. Thanks so much. I'll pass it over to Mindy.
All right, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Mindy Lin. Thank you for having me here. I am based out in New York City. I am currently a senior product ops manager at Better, where I'm focused primarily in the homeownership experience piece in really making sure that not only our internal teams are set up for success, but a lot of our product launches are successful in a sense of from a data standpoint and also from a collaborative standpoint and making sure that all of our risks are mitigated and ready to go. Prior to Better, I was at PayPal in another product operations role in which I was very product embedded as well and looking at sort of the customer feedback and the types of like back end pieces and really making sure that all of our stakeholders are looped in at the appropriate time throughout the PDLC process. As far as a fun fact about me, I do enjoy solo traveling a lot. And this was pre-pandemic. So the last solo travel trip I did was 2 weeks in Singapore and Malaysia. So if you're into traveling and when this is all over, then yeah, reach out to me and I'll be more than happy to provide my solo travel tips. Thank you.
Thanks, Mindy, and I'll hand it over to Miranda.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Miranda Fulenchek. I'm a director of product operations at Vertify here in Austin, Texas. And my main function is helping us scale the product team. My background is in technical project management and program management and consulting. And a fun fact about me is in college, I decided to take Danish as a foreign language on a whim and found out it was extremely difficult. So if you ever want to say that your name is Miranda in Danish, I could probably help you, but that's about it.
Awesome, Miranda. Thanks so much. Great, awesome. So before diving in, we have tons of questions to get through, but just want to go over how we've structured this panel. We've broken it up into 3 parts. I think first part will really give a chance for the panelists to share what launches look like in their world. What was interesting when we were debriefing before this was just how different launches varied from each of our respective organizations. So we'll take some time to chat through that. Then we're going to get into the nitty gritty of launch operations and really share out tools, processes for managing launches. And then we're going to close with some lessons learned, or what I call launch horror stories, and really share lessons learned that came out of that and discuss how to improve those going forward. So with that, we could jump into the first section of our panel, which is sharing launch context. So I would love to hear from this group. First of all, what role does product ops play in your organization for launches? Maybe Sherry, you could kick us off there.
Yeah, absolutely. So from my past experience, we were very focused on setting up like the mandatory steps for release management. And once that model kind of settled, we followed an embedded model. So product operations managers, such as myself, we prepared checklists with all the different milestones from PRD creation and socialization through the actual launch. And we worked with our product managers to make sure we were aligned with all of our stakeholders, servicing and mitigating any blockers and risks, and also staying on track time-wise. In my new role in GitHub, I've been here for about 3 weeks now. So what I can say is that product operations is a lot more centralized for the entire product team. So we're really very focused on the process to empower product managers to prepare each of their own features for launch. So we create the infrastructure and guidelines for product managers to think about their target audience, the documentation and trainings, metrics, go-to-market materials, and all of those types of things. And then we, on our end, are tracking the releases and also focus on closing the loop in different product areas.
So I guess from our side, we are mainly involved both in pre and post launch. So to give an example, before we on the pre-launch, before we release, we make sure that we have the right hooks in place to collect information in terms of what our users are doing, how are they consuming or interacting with our product, as well as find insights and segments and cohorts about our users that could give us a little bit more insights into how they respond to these type of launches. So I work very closely with the product organization to make sure that we have the right implementation and capabilities to collect this kind of analytics. And then another part that we work in pre-launch is to work with product marketing and connect with product organization to improve the user experience when we go out to launches by in-app messaging and having the right resources and documentation on the interface so that our customers, first of all, know what's coming out. We have communicated them, help champion the launch and promote the launch, but also really understand how useful it is for them with the documentation and resources that's available to them. On post-launch, so after we go live, we're collecting all of these information. Like, it's important for us to know these customer outcomes from these different channels, such as telemetry, product analytics, as well as customer support feedback, marketing campaign or guide or in-app campaign engagement. Collect all of this and help synthesize some of this information and identify what those opportunities are, what are some of the risks, and how we can turn those risks with our clients into opportunities, and share this with not just only with the product organization, but across the organization with different, obviously, customize it for the audience so that they can go out and improve our product offering, improve our customer service, and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. Just to add on to what Daria and Sherry says, I think as everyone is hearing this, there's a lot of overlap. So I guess in my current organization at Better, what I'm focused on for a successful launch is really partnering with our product teams as well, and making sure that we are answering the question of why are we building what we're building, and also making sure that the projects that we've come up with that we think can improve the overall customer experience is following under our company strategic goals of, let's say, increasing conversion or increasing our user base by X percentage. So that's from that perspective, like from the planning cycle, that's sort of how we're ensuring like a successful launch already early on in the planning cycle. And then as we go throughout the PDLC process, constantly working with our data science team, our analytics team, to make sure that we have those success metrics in place for each project, and sort of having these key touch points with these teams and making sure that we are meeting that goal. So it's sort of a blend, I would say, at my current company, with what Daria and what Sherry are sort of explaining and putting out there.
Yeah, and at Vertify, we're a smaller startup, so I think everybody kind of wears a lot of hats. But in product operations, a lot of what I do is help facilitate picking ideas and driving those forward, and coming up with good scalable processes like scoring what moves forward to a feature, and then getting that feature into the hands of development, making sure they have what they need to get it shipped out, and then even making sure that that information gets translated into something that product marketing can understand to get it out, and showing our customers how that new feature can be used is how Vertify is working right now.
Awesome. Yeah, great to see some of the commonalities across some of our panelists here. One thing that I would call out, which I should have mentioned earlier on, is if you do have questions, please drop them in the chat. We're going to be monitoring that throughout. And we also have 20 minutes at the end dedicated to Q&A. So definitely want this to be an open discussion. So any questions that pop up, just drop them in the chat. I guess kind of piggybacking off of that, you kind of alluded to it, Miranda, kind of like the fact that your company is a little smaller, it kind of impacts how that looks. I'd love to hear how the size of your company, but also the industry that your companies are in, has impacted launches at your company, and kind of some of the complexities that come with that.
Well, I can start. So before this, I was at PayPal, so it was a larger company in how a product ops person or someone in a product ops role was very embedded. So I can say that it really depends, first off, on the industry you're in. So from me coming from fintech, it's a heavily regulated area. So that calls for a lot additional stakeholders from a global and from a local perspective. So local regulators and government and legal and compliance. And also like from a content perspective as well, it really depends on how regulated the industry is. And then here at Better, which is a relatively smaller company, it's definitely still regulated because we're still involved in mortgage tech and it's heavily involved in information from our users. It differs in a sense, but at the same time, because those two industries are super regulated and under a lot of scrutiny, that's when we have to loop in a lot of stakeholders and various teams to kind of make sure that our launch is not only successful, but making sure that we pretty much check off everything on our list from a risk perspective.
And to piggyback off of that, since Mindy and I were both coming from Better, so something that I was thinking about related to this is about, the customers, and it's a B2C business. And, kind of in the mortgage real estate space, a lot of the time it's going to be one-time customers versus repeat customers for a platform like GitHub, where there are millions of active users. In both cases, yes, lots of cross-functional stakeholder involvement for sure. And one other thing that I'd say about GitHub is that there's a huge consideration with lots of different breakdowns for which launches are geared towards different customer segments. And our users are very, very vocal and have a lot of feedback about how to improve the platform. And then, of course, we also have the enterprise space because businesses use GitHub as a whole. So there's a lot of feedback coming from there, too. So that influences the launches that are coming out from both of those different types of feedback.
Well, I think I'm going to touch on the two points that Sherry and Mindy touched. First of all is the customer segment, which is extremely important for cybersecurity as well, because our customer needs are going to be different based on what tools and services platforms that they are in, right? So, for example, our cloud customers, their needs are going to be totally different than our on-premise customers. So, our product is organized around based on the differences on these customers, how or when we're doing the product launches, how are we communicating is going to differ by this, or even the resource skills within the product organization is different because of this customer segmentation. And then touching on what Mindy was talking about, the industry, that also plays an important role. Cybersecurity is a fast-paced, ever-changing industry, and we as Tenable, we have to stay ahead of the game, right? There's detecting zero vulnerabilities is very important for us, and to be able to provide that kind of insight and visibility to our customers before it becomes a threat is really important, and that changes the whole game. So our product organization, it has to be agile and very flexible to shift things around when an event happens, such that they need to forget that roadmap that they were working on, shift things around, work on what needs to be done to give that extra support to the customers and push it out for them, and then go back to where, to their roadmap. So it's that fluidity is extremely important in these type of industries.
Yeah, and at Vertify, because we're sales and marketing alignment, we can move pretty quickly. Also, what's interesting too is we have two different products. We have an analytics product, which is newer, and the functionality is mostly new, so we can ship that very quickly. We might ship up to 10 times a week sometimes. But then we have an older product that's an integration product that we have to do a lot more regression testing on. So, that might take a month or so if we want to release something like that, because it's actually manipulating customer data and what comes out on the other end of their CRM. So it also depends on what product. So it's very interesting kind of to see the different things.
Yeah, really interesting points, like Daria around like fluidity and flexibility, and then Miranda around kind of this idea of continuous shipping. And I think that's actually a perfect segue into our next talk, which is launch operations, like the nitty-gritty of launching a product. And one thing that I've been hearing a lot about and a lot of discussion around is measuring the success of launches. So I would love to hear, maybe Mindy, how do you think about successful launches, and what does that look like for you and your team?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in terms of like measuring launches, there's kind of like a twofold piece, and I sort of touched on it in the beginning, but to be more specific, I think with measuring success, it has to start from the very beginning. So during our planning cycle, in which we have all these company strategic goals, we have to make sure that we also have the KRs that are very reasonable place that can move these strategic goals forward. So that's when what is very useful is when we work with our data analytics teams, our data science teams, and really making sure that each of these KRs that we've come up with eventually they roll up and they fit among our company goals of increasing conversion XYZ. I keep using conversion as a piece because that's a very common piece in just the industry, in the tech industry in general. And then there's, as we go along throughout the PDLC process, the second piece is really making sure that we have the right success metrics on a project level basis. So that can be, increasing the number of users that hit this landing page by this amount at this time of the day. So really making sure that not only do we have success metrics per project, but we have these KRs in place that fit within our company goals, and that we can always reassess it once we've launched these products and say, hey, how does this fit into our overall strategic goals? How do these success metrics work? So yeah, it's really like a two-part process, but in the end, now that I think about it, it is really throughout the whole planning, throughout the entire 6-month or 12-month cycle in which we're building products, that we should be constantly thinking about it.
Right. Yeah, no, that's great, Mindy. And I know, Daria, we've talked about how, your function's really focused on post-launch analytics, and I'd be really curious to hear more about that.
It's so I think the idea is very similar to what Mindy was saying. I take a look at it from a two-step approach as well too. At the highest level, I've actually used a North Star framework that Amplitude introduced back in the day, and I customize it for the products, like for each product's needs and what they're trying to do. But then in a nutshell, the whole North Star framework is to identify your product's value to the customer and make sure that everything that you're doing revolves around it. The objective is to, no matter what you do, everything should be enhancing that product value. So once you identify that, and it's actually harder than you would think to get to that one measurable product value, depending on what sector you're in. But once you identify that, it helps the product organization and the business organization to clearly see what your center of universe looks like. So being able to measure against that at the highest level is really important, and that's what usually we do. And then the mid-level which is more on future release or project or product launch, right? If we have a major release or a feature that's coming on, one of the things that we do is what is our goal? What do we intend to do with this release? Like, what do we want to achieve? Identifying that, talking through that, and clearly communicating it, not just within product, but around the business, and getting them to champion that goal within their own elements, from product marketing, customer support, looking at the customer journey. But really, everyone championing around that goal is going to be really important. And I come in identifying how we can measure that. And measuring that helps us at the end of the release. What are we learning out of this? Did we hit the target or not? And it's important to be actually honest about it. And if you don't hit the target, that's okay too. That means that, we might have to adjust a few things, or we actually learn something that's more important that we didn't know when we released. Now we have a better insight into our customers' response to this, so we can shift things around and be more flexible next time around. So that's the mid-level or the project/product level measurement that we look at.
Yeah, that's such a great point, Daria. And I think, I forgot to mention this as well, but like success metrics can not always work as intended. There are times in which we're not meeting our goals. And I think like that provides a lot of valuable insight in terms of, okay, what are we doing wrong? like at which point of the end-to-end process is there additional friction that we can work on? So those metrics in which, it's not performing as well as we thought it would, that provides even more insight of and key learning as to like what can we do better, what have we learned from this that we can bring to our, I guess, like next iteration.
Or even to help us prioritize some of the features in the next roadmap, right? A lot of the work, for example, that I worked previously is when you have a new interface coming, a lot of the times we don't know which features that we want to prioritize. Should we introduce something new or bring in something that has been so sticky around, right? To be able to have that kind of information, to be able to say, you know what, based on our previous engagement, it looks like our customers really like this. Let's prioritize this. But this seems to be, we can bring in something new that we haven't measured at all, but let's see if like, how is that's going to stick around. And that can help tell a lot in terms of what we want to do in the next 6 months.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, so many interesting threads around like accountability, around asking ourselves if those were the right success metrics to even begin with, and then how that will then influence the future roadmap. I think, Dara, you said something that was really interesting, which was using success metrics to communicate and rally a cross-functional group around a launch. And I think reflecting on some of my launch experience, which involved communicating with 45, sometimes more different stakeholders for a brand new product, I know that was a really large pain point for me. So I'd love to hear from this group, how have you all managed communications for launches at your company? As I know that's something that a lot of folks struggle with. Maybe Sherry, any ideas there, thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, when every release is going to be very different, and it would require a lot, of different considerations when it comes to communication with internal stakeholders, and the rest of the team that we'd be working with. There is definitely some sort of minimal level that needs to be done. And, at Better, we did have a process where every product manager was expected to publish a release note. And then when it became time for launch, it was expected that a Slack and email message would go out to the product, data, design, engineering community. So that way everyone knows this has launched. And with that in mind, we'd also be working with, our enablement teams to make sure that all of the employees are trained on the process, that would be working with the customers directly, so that they know about the new features before launch and how it affects, whatever the internal workflows are and what customers might be seeing, on the user-facing side. And also in terms of product support preparation for known bugs and workarounds. So there's a lot of communication there happening, mostly internal, to make sure that everyone's on the same page. For GitHub, there are definitely a lot of similarities in the process with Better about, publishing a type of release note. I will mention that there's kind of a tiering system. So different types of releases need different sorts of communication and, different materials as well. And that's something that I thought was really interesting coming from Better, where it was more of like one release note fits all. Not that one's wrong and one's right, but just different. And also something that I noticed at GitHub that was cool is that generally a public blog post is published for the GitHub community to see when a new feature goes live. It's something that, all users will be able to access. Therefore, it's something that we want communicated so people can start using those new kinds of products.
Yeah, and at Vertify, so we try to be open and throughout the whole process. So we have a public portal that anybody can submit an idea to, and that's also where the product team submits an idea, so you can see everything that's coming through the funnel. And from there, we have like weekly meetings with the product team where we go through all of those ideas and score them out. And then we look at those scores of the ideas when we have room for something new, and then we decide what gets promoted to a feature. Once it gets promoted to a feature, and it gets slotted for a release, then it goes on a public roadmap, or well, not public, but public internally to everyone in the company, so that they can see, and then they can also see the stages that it's coming through. So it starts off in design. From design, it goes from like ready to ship, and then they can see once it starts to go into develop, and they can see all the back and forth there. And then once it gets to the point where it's ready to ship, that's when we'll notify the product marketing folks and let them know. And then we also have an additional scoring system that lets us know what kind of marketing we want to do for that feature. So should it be a blog post? Should it just be an email? Should it go in a newsletter? Things like that. So throughout basically go to market, we have open communications throughout with the company. It's been pretty useful with us.
Yeah, that's great. It sounds kind of in both cases that having this set of communication channels, depending on tier, that hit the right stakeholders at the right time has been really key. And I actually wanted to look at the chat, and Erica's asked a ton of really great questions here, but I thought there was one that was particularly relevant to one that we're just talking about, which is, do you have a playbook, or do each of these various bills of material vary depending on the launch? Curious if anyone has any strong opinions here.
I can go. So some teams call this a playbook, but we call it the definition of done, to be able to have a list of things that you want to get done with this release, or to identify what you need to do before the release, and then do that checklist at the end of it is extremely important, especially if it's a complex release, if you have multiple teams involved. So it becomes not just a feature release, but a big product release where you have enablement of customer service, sales, marketing. Then you really have to have that definition of done, or those checklists, to make sure that everyone is prepared and ready to go. And within that, obviously, this goes into planning what your milestones are going to be in different stages before you get to pre-release. What does it look like? How do you, when you release it to internal teams, where is that feedback? What is that feedback loop is going to be like? How you're going to make iterations and changes along the way before you go all public to your customers. So we have that definition of done, and that checklist is available to all product managers, but also across the organization, so that no other team is being missed out, especially product operations, where product analytics is really important for us. We want to make sure that all of the hooks are in right places.
Yeah, I mean, I would say as far as playbook, that's a very loose term. And I would say that as far as like the checklist goes, there's like the bare minimum of what has to be done, like the requirements. But, I think like with the beauty of like product ops and product launches is that we're always going to find some sort of level of friction within each launch. And that's when we're going to have to steer away from like a fixed path and kind of deal with some of the challenges we're facing during launch. So I would say like there is a playbook, very, very loosely held, but there are requirements, or like the bare minimum as to what needs to be done before launch. But of course, there's always like room for modification and revisions throughout the release process.
Yeah, I love that notion of an iterative launch framework that isn't too prescriptive, but that you're continuously improving through your learnings. I think that's great. I think switching gears a bit, when I think about launches, I think it is probably one of the most impactful pieces of work that you could have as a product operations function. Also one of the most stressful. So I'd love to hear from this group, what are some launch failures that you've had, and what were some of the key learnings that have emerged from that? I think this could potentially be a collective therapy session. So maybe Mindy, do you want to kick us off with what were some of a launch failure that you've experienced within product operations?
Oh yeah, no, of course. I think like the first thing that I thought of that has been pretty consistent across, various product launches is not looping in certain teams or some stakeholders at the right time during the PDLC process. And the reason I say that is because I think like as a product ops manager, we're supposed to be the connective tissue in bringing in people early on from the planning cycle throughout and then to post launch. And a way of doing that is making sure that we are empowering our stakeholders and making them feel included, that their voice matters, that their input and their insight matters throughout this PDLC, and that we're not coming to them telling them to do X, Y, Z. It's more of helping them understand why they are needed, and how they can help us build the best product for our customers. So yeah, that's sort of like something that's always going to be, I think, ongoing in terms of finding out that this stakeholder needs to be looped in later on. But as I mentioned, like the PDLC process is an iterative process overall.
That's great. Thanks, Mindy.
I
Miranda? Or sorry, go ahead, Daria.
I was going to say, I 100% agree with Mindy on this one. They're usually a team that's left behind, and then you just have to scramble through the last minute. But if I have to go back and think of a story, I think that was traumatizing for me was my previous company. We were on a really tight deadline to release this revamped, sleek new interface. And so like everyone is very closely working with engineers. I am coming more on the data quality side of things and reviewing the features, prioritizing the bugs, working through all of that fun stuff. And just like 2 weeks before the release, I get invited to this executive meeting, and just to talk about like how is the progress going, where we are, what's left behind. And it dawned on me in the conversation that our CPO and CTO have a total different understanding of what we're releasing with the features versus what the team has been working. Like some of the features that they pointed out as really important is something that was in the bottom of the list type of thing. And I mean, that created a lot of tense conversation as well as like difficult conversation, as well as like really stressful couple of days for the engineering and like quality and product team to get everything out and work through all of that. So the lesson learned for me from that instance, first is that make sure that whatever launch goals are being clearly defined, is communicated across and top to bottom of the organization, just to make sure that everybody is on the same page. There are no surprises at the end of it. And then the second one is, if you notice even a slight misalignment, speak up. Say it out loud and early on, rather than have this come back to you or to your teammates or whoever later in the progress, because it's just going to be more detrimental to everyone if it's caught later. So early the better, speak up.
Yeah, I agree with Daria. I'm a big fan. If you see something, say something. Yeah, with us, I mean, I think it's kind of a blessing and a curse of being able to ship so quickly, right? So we can send out so much information, and I find myself that it was like just really hard to keep everybody up to date. So, I had some folks come to me and say, it feels like it's kind of a black hole. Like we don't know. It's like all of a sudden just all these things came out and we didn't really know where they were. And I found it like really hard to keep up with the pace of getting out all the information and making sure everybody was aligned. So for us, I think it helped getting that integration, and also with an integration background, I'm a fan. So getting an integration with Jira and AHA, and getting a roadmap that was out there that anybody could look at any time. So if they had a question, or if anybody had wanted to see where something was in the pipeline, they could go to that roadmap and they wouldn't have to, talk to me about it or have a conversation, or even wait till we do like a monthly training or something like that. They can go and see where everything is just real time. I think that helped a lot.
So that's great. Yeah, Miranda, we also have a continuous release process, and making sure folks are enabled on the right releases is something that I've also struggled with. So definitely not alone there. So I think that concludes our lessons learned section, and we could open up for Q&A. So if folks have any additional questions based on what we've chatted through today, or even if it's not related to some of the topics that we talked to, but related to launches, please drop them in the chat. I see a few right now. I think one that I thought was interesting, kind of related to the more nitty gritty of operations, is a question from Erica, which is, what tools are you using to manage your go-to-market tasks and strategies? So I guess, is this, living in a spreadsheet? Is this in on Asana? What tools are you guys using to kind of manage some of these go-to-market tasks?
I can go through ours. I've already mentioned we use AHA for new ideas and features, which is in road mapping, which I think works really well, and it has a great integration with Jira, which we obviously use for our dev cycles. And then we use for kind of go to market, we use Asana. So once it kind of goes out, then it goes to Asana. Actually, a little bit before, it has all of the steps there. And then we also use Pendo a lot for some of our post go-to-market analytics.
I think we're using the same tools, Miranda. So AHA and Jira, definitely a lot of our engineering team is going to be on Jira. This is where they prioritize and write their requirements, and that's where the sprints are. But the business looks at it from the AHA, where it's all connected there, roll up to the OKR or the goals or the strategies, however you want to align across different initiatives across the product organization that goes into AHA. We used to use AHA Asana for some of the management, like program management with different cross-functional teams, being able to write their checklist, what they need to do for the go-to-market, but now transitioning into Asana so that it's all in one place and everything's tied together. So that's a process, and obviously it takes time to transition people from one tool to another. So that's something that we're going through right now.
Yeah, I would echo that and say that at Better, it was mostly Jira for the overall PDLC. And then some teams use some others, other tools like Airtable was popular for some time, Monday as well, especially for go-to-market. So that's interesting. And at GitHub, we use as much as possible in GitHub itself. So it's very cool as a new employee here to just be able to play around with that and, using issues and that kind of thing.
Awesome. I love that. Dog fooding. Next question that we had, which is interesting, which actually touches more on the cultural piece. And I think this is interesting. I think oftentimes product ops can have this role of the unsung hero. So I'm curious, this was a question from Josh, which was, do you feel that the role of product ops and launches is appreciated and celebrated at your respective organizations?
I think so. Based on the demand, I want to say yes. So one example I actually want to give in the conversation was one of our product managers, especially after we release a big launch, they go back and share the success with the engineering team. And for them to see how successful we have been with all of their efforts is also promotes that championing and that culture, right? Like they're part of this team. So how does this translate to product ops? Because they also know that all of this data and great visualizations are not going to be there without the product ops making sure that we have the right hooks and implementation and the process around it. So for example, engineering team really appreciates having this kind of information where they are included in the success of the product. And so they want to make sure that they work with us to have a lot of this data available, work with us to surface the product telemetry. So if I'm getting a lot of demand to get a lot of this this work, that means it's appreciative, it's wanted, and there's a big interest on it.
I'll echo that as well. I think everyone appreciates. I think it's product ops role at my company anyway has made things more visible, has made things seem a little bit more streamlined, and I think people really appreciate feeling like they have a better grasp on what's happening. So yeah, I think people overall really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I have to echo what Daria and Miranda are saying. I think at times, because we're in the middle of everything and kind of managing all these key stakeholders, it isn't until like maybe like a launch they realize, hey, this is, with a product ops individual embedded in, this launch has become a lot smoother than before. So I don't think like people think about it when they're performing the launch, but I think like it's an afterthought later on, and they realize, wow, like having a product ops individual is very special. Like they provide actually a lot of value in ensuring the success, not only internally, but also for launch.
But I do have to say, if you don't feel like you're appreciated or celebrated, don't give up. It takes time. I think for them to see the value of product operations in your success, your product success, takes a little bit time. And it, like, at least from my perspective, when I first joined, there wasn't any group like this. So creating that foundation and showing that value had take a lot of time and a lot of discussions, a lot of implementation and work. And now we're reaping the benefits a little bit later. So don't give up.
Yeah, and I think too that it comes from repeating the process too. I think also, like operations can get this bad rap because a lot of times it feels like we're putting a lot of red tape on things. It's like, well, I used to just be able to walk up to a product manager or a developer and ask them to do it, and they would. And you're like, well, now you just put in an idea, and they're like, oh, it seems like so much work. But once they realize, once everybody's following that process, now it just makes everything so much better. And that does take a while. It takes repeating, getting people to follow the process. Once everybody's following the process, then you can kind of start feeling the appreciation from there. But yeah, there's probably friction getting up to that point for sure.
And part of it too is also identifying what gaps are currently there. Just because there's a process in place doesn't mean that it's perfect, and it doesn't mean that even if someone else hasn't called out, this is a specific issue within the process, or that's what you can be there to demonstrate that value and make that process better and make those launches go smoother.
Yeah, completely agree with Sherry. It's really speaking to folks, understanding what the existing pain points are today, solving them, and then going back to that original stakeholder and saying, hey, here's how we've improved that process, and really closing that loop. So no, definitely agree there, and just glad to see that that the role is being appreciated. We had a next question here, which was, at what point do you begin to identify which features will have certain levels of launches? How far in advance do you have launches planned out for, i.e., a full understanding of all launches will be worked on for the quarter versus just in H1? So I think what the question is getting at here is how far out are launches planned, but also the level of rigor with those particular launches. I mean, I would just say at Amplitude, if just to kind of kick it off, I would say it very much depends on two things. One is our planning cycle. So when we go through our annual planning cycle, we'll identify these large flagship launches that we know we have to prep for at the start of the year. But then throughout, as we're going through a quarterly planning process, we'll then identify smaller launches that require less enablement, and we'll work through those accordingly. But I don't know, Mindy, what does that look like for you?
Well, I think I would have to sort of echo what you said in terms of like large flagship launches. That's when that are planned at the start of the planning cycle. That's when we really have to dive into and determine whether it should be rolled out by 1% or 5%, and then sort of reassess throughout the next 6 or 12 months that this large launch is in place. And then there's also small feature launches as well, in which we really pretty much review whether this feature launch we're able to roll it out to all of our customers. And so I think it pretty much depends on just how large your launch is, whether it's a feature launch or whether it's a small tweak to an existing feature. That's sort of when we start to identify whether we can do a full scale launch or just by small segments.
I also would add on to that is the customer is also an important part of that too. We have customers, like I said, on-premise customers where they're not connected to internet or cloud and any of those services. So when you do a launch and you want them to make an update to our product, that's going to be in quarterly basis. So you're working from a previous quarter to pack all of these updates into one place, and you have to be very rigid about what's going to go out so that you can actually include all of them in and there's no last minute changes that's happening. So but you also have to plan ahead of time, because if you don't add that one feature that you really wanted and you are releasing in 3 weeks, then that's out. You have to wait another quarter to get that release. So having that plan for certain products a year out or 6 months out is going to be extremely important. And obviously that depends on who you're releasing that new feature or product.
Yeah, I think what Daria said makes a lot of sense of it. It really depends on kind of what product you're releasing, is the planning will change, right? So for us, yeah, we have these big, yearly meetings where we talk about what we want to kind of complete for the year. And then we'll have a quarterly meeting where we have kind of goals for the quarter, and then weekly, and then daily, right? So it just depends on kind of what your release schedule is for. And because, we're doing the continuous state development, we might be having weekly and daily meetings of talking about what that release will look like. And again, I think it just depends on product and company and a bunch of different variations.
That's great, Miranda. Yeah, definitely agree there. One of the last questions that we have, I guess we've talked about rolling out a launch framework and what that looks like. And I think this kind of takes a step back and asks, when you roll out process optimizations, be it for launch or something else, how do you ensure adoptions by team? It's easy to set it and forget it, and then usually everyone forgets it. How do you all think about adoption for your processes on your teams?
I'll jump in for this one. I think that the best way to help adoption is to make sure that the processes that you're designing are in tandem with the product managers and whoever else will be following these processes. If they're involved throughout, the whole scope of the project, they're reading over drafts, they're providing feedback, they see value in the process that you're building out, then they will be so much more likely to follow it and be advocates for the process. I can say that at Better, there were some processes I was building out. We had some product managers that really were not our friends. They really didn't like process too much. They just kind of wanted to do things their way. And after showing them the work that I was doing and what problems I was trying to solve, they were a lot more interested in it. And they felt that they were being heard. Their problems were being heard. And as we started to roll it out, they were actually really happy about it and became advocates and started actually telling their other product manager friends, hey, you got to make sure to fill out this release note. You have to make sure that you're including this kind of criteria. So it was really interesting to see that actually, bubble out and how it worked out as a whole. But I would just say to make sure that, whoever your customer is for the process, keep them in the loop the whole way through.
Yeah. I would have to agree with Sherry. So we worked at the same company prior. And I want to say that just building out a process and having various stakeholders adopt it and follow it is a huge win because, as Sherry mentioned, not a lot, and Miranda, we're sort of like, in a way, the blockers and making sure that everything needs to fall into place before a successful product launch. So in terms of just like adoption in itself, yeah, getting buy-in or initial buy-in for a proposal of a new process from stakeholders is a huge win. And then sort of bringing them along the entire process of creating this new process in place and answering these pain points. It's sort of how I would approach it too. Just, not presenting them with just, oh, here's a new process, but really bringing all the stakeholders who would be impacted by this into the room, asking them for their feedback and really making sure that, hey, their voices are heard too. How can we use their concepts and their ideas and sort of tie it into this new process, and at the same time address our pain points?
Yeah, I think you both like that's. I think I feel the same way about it. Like coming at it with clear communication and empathy is huge, right? Like you're trying to solve a problem that they have, and just continuously talking through them, telling them the purpose of the product or the process, and continuously having those conversations and just repeating the process, what it's doing, and then as people follow the process, again highlighting the benefits from that process and talking to them, and also refining it to make it, you want the process to be easy to follow, because if no one adopts it at the end of the day, it will fail. So I think it just comes down to communication and empathy.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, Miranda, around the empathy piece. Always encourage my team to put themselves in the shoes of whoever the process is serving them, and to ask themselves what's working and what's not working. We had a question here around launches, which from Scott Jones, which is, in regards to your launches, how do you manage the release stages and set expectations with your user base?
So for us, I think again, it just comes down to communication. We'll have like a pre-launch email that'll go out to folks, and then a post-launch email. So kind of what's coming. We have newsletters that lets our customer base know what's coming, and then we also encourage our customers heavily to give us feedback and let them know that like a lot of what we're doing, our feature changes are coming from ideas of the customer too. So we like to close the loop too on there if we've released something with a customer to say, hey, this was your idea, like it's out here and it's done. So that's kind of how we'll manage that communication.
I guess from our side, we're not as much involved in managing the release stages, because that's more on the product organization with, with the product engineers and how they manage the releases. But if we look at the milestones, those are really important for us to enable and empower some of the businesses and cross-functional teams during this release stages, such as when we go early release or only internal release, then it's really important for us to make sure that the customer service team has the right information on how to use the tools, what features are being released, so that they can actually support the customers better. And having that kind of feedback from them, and the internal customer service feedback, and being able to connect that feedback with the product before the release is going to be really important. I think the second part of that question was how we set expectations with the user base. So this is something that we work with the marketing team very closely, and we use a lot of in-app messaging, such as Pendo, to be able to get guides out and resources out for our customers and help them get excited for the new launch that's coming up. If this is like a paper or a blog, or even like a short conference introduction that the marketing team is doing, we want to support a lot of those activities, campaign activities, through in-app messaging, so that our customers know what's going on. They're able to see it early on, be prepared, and when we go live, they are excited to start using it.
Something I'd like to add from my perspective about the second part, the setting expectations with the user base, is that a lot of our features do come from feature requests, which are directly from customers. So at GitHub, we are very focused on closing the loop with our customers to ensure that they know that their suggestions have made it onto our roadmap and they are being implemented. So that's something that we keep in mind, making sure to link our public roadmap issues to the actual feature requests. So that way they see it and they see when it goes live, and the blog post is linked as well. And since we do have our roadmap publicized, so you can see when it's closed that our features have shipped.
Awesome. is great. So I believe that is a wrap for everyone. So I guess first, just want to thank the audience for the really fantastic questions, really spurred a lot of really great discussion amongst this group. And secondly, just want to thank the panelists. I learned a ton just in hearing and listening to you all today. So a huge thank you there. And yeah, I believe we're going to wrap, and then we will be back for the next section shortly. But yeah, thank you all, appreciate it, and we will chat soon.
Thank you, Shintaro.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.